Hello students, welcome to the first question of DAM, Daily Answer Writing and Mentorship Program. So by now you might have already kind of acquainted yourself with respect to the procedure that we are going to follow. Why I am reiterating this particular thing is perhaps some of you have some different understanding of things as far as how the process will go. Very briefly, so you have got the question. You have 24 hours to upload. Next day 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Now what I am doing is, the moment the 12 o'clock timing is over, then I myself am evaluating your papers. So what I have thought of is, when I evaluate your paper, then and then only I will go for the video, basically because I want to kind of look into what all the ways you are writing the answer, what are the problems basically on an average most of you are facing, so that my feedback would be in the video would be accordingly. Obviously, we will be discussing about the question and the topic, but it is better, I thought, that with respect to your understanding also, if I can say something, central theme of the issues and all that anyway we are going to discuss, but how you people are writing, any problem specific guidance that you may need. So that's the reason you are getting the video. For video you are required to take another 24 hours. Okay, so you are getting the video after the kind of 2 days of kind of lecture, 2 days of the question is 2 days after the question is been posted. Okay, so the question is about Charvaka. Now you already know the basic theme of Charvaka is. Now question is, if you see that way, similar to this year's first question of UPSC 2022 of Plato. So what they have asked in the Plato's question is epistemology and metaphysics connection. So in a similar way, you can say this question also asks you to do it. Now what I understood from the answers that you people have written is that most of you know the content. Most of you know what what particularly Charvaka is saying. What is the philosophy of Charvaka basically? What is the metaphysics of Charvaka? What is the epistemology of Charvaka and all that? But even in spite of knowing that, what I have found is most of you literally have missed the proper demand of the question. When I say demand, as in for that 10 marks in that 2 pages within the 150 words, what exactly you should be writing and in what format you should be writing, right? Okay, so as you know, Charvaka means what? Perception only. Now this you know anyway. So the moment perception only, then the metaphysical stand will become matter only. And the moment this metaphysical stand is there, that means ethically nothing transcendental. Transcendental, when we say transcendental, means beyond space and time. Okay, something beyond that cannot be experienced, something beyond that cannot be normally known. So that's the thing. That's broadly what Charvaka does. Now there are nuances and all, though Charvaka is not very complicated kind of philosopher for our purpose. Okay. So the question was, what are the implications of Charvaka's epistemological stand? Do you agree with the stand? Justify. Now you need to understand one thing. For 10 marks, this is what you have got. Okay. Be clear as to how you craft the answer. Be clear as to how you kind of connect points in the answer as far as the demand of the question. Okay. So, normally for 10 marks, the kind of structure that you will be following is, there will be some kind of introduction, okay. So, some intro, then for 10 marks normally subheadings. Now you will understand why I am saying this. Subheading 1, perhaps subheading 2, and then critical comment, and then conclusion. See, for your own guidance sake, you should be following this format. Now, that does not mean this is hard and fast rule, but that is for your own formatting in your mind when you will write answer. It helps. How? Because you need to understand one thing. For any 10 marker, what you have is only 150 words, 2 pages, and around 7 minutes. This is a limit. You cannot exceed any of these. Point is, you cannot exceed any of these, and your planning, your answer writing also should be accordingly. That is, you don't miss anything of this. So, how to do it within this particular thing? Like for example, in the 7 minutes also, what plan you can do is 1 minute plus 6 minutes. So, this 1 plus 6 formula. For the first 1 minute, what you do? You think and you do this exercise, what we are doing now, as to, in this particular question, broadly, what would be my introduction, what would be my introduction, what would be my subheadings, and what would be my, what I would be writing in critical comment. So, point is, all 4 boxes you need to think to actually come to the proper answer, and then only your proper answer would be touching all the points within 150 words within 7 minutes, right? Now, is this particular question, what the question is saying, what are the implications of Charvaka's epistemological stand? Now, first you talk about general about Charvak, okay. Most of you have done it correctly. Now, here again, there is no one and full and final kind of introduction. This is the only introduction that you should write. Aisa kuch nahi hota. There is nothing like that. What you can do is, you can write, the most relevant of what is being asked. So, when you introduce, means what you will introduce? What you will introduce? Charvak, and especially the epistemology. Okay. So, what you can mention here is Charvak being one of the heterodox schools of Indian philosophy, which is perhaps the only materialistic school in Indian philosophy, have the unique and extreme epistemological stand of perception as only Praman. This much would be kind of your introduction. Okay. So, this is one way. Like for example, Charvaka being materialistic philosophy, Charvaka being only materialistic philosophy from the typical Indian classical philosophical tradition. When we say classical, means this 9 schools that we know, okay. Hamara jo whatever syllabus that we have is called classical Indian philosophy, and heterodox, okay. So, heterodox means they are Nastika school. You can mention the word instead of heterodox, you can mention Nastika school, and you can mention about Charvaka being positivistic philosophy, Charvaka being radical empiricistic philosophy, but materialism, positivism, then non-transcendentalism. So point is, you just introduce Charvak, and especially focus should be on perception. Some statement, one statement should talk about perception here, or one aspect of your statement. It can be one statement only. Then comes, as the question is asking, once your introduction is done, as the question is asking about epistemological stand ka implications. So what it is asking? Implications, it is what is asking, but implications of what? Epistemological stand. So why don't you have Charvaka epistemology as the subheading? First subheading, Charvaka epistemology. Here then you can write point wise. One is perception, second is how they reject inference, third how they reject testimony, and fourth you can write about all other sources obviously get rejected because inference is rejected, that is comparison, arthapatti and all other things. So this is Charvaka's epistemology. First, briefly, at least one line each, you specifically mention about what Charvaka is doing. Testimony about, not accepting Vedas, inference to obviously not accepting Vyapti, in the one statement only. You need to be crisp here. Perception as the only, because it is never mistaken and things like that. Now, the main thing is implications, another subheading. So this you know, all the content you know. Now, implications means what? Most of you done the mistake that inference, rejection of inference, rejection of testimony, okay, is implication of epistemology. It's not implication of epistemology, epistemological stand. I understand you are writing that perception, their comment about epistemology is perception is the only valid source, yes, but when they reject inference, reject testimony is also epistemology. So this whole is epistemology, and now you have to write implications. So again, inference, testimony cannot come here. It is already taken care. So perception, inference, testimony rejected, perception accepted, these three rejected is all part of Charvaka's epistemology. Now, if that is the kind of epistemology you are having, what would be its implications? Number one implication is matter is only reality. Matter only. Then basically reject soul, God. Third, causation, Swabhavavad. Okay. Then when we say reject soul means Dehatmavad. Then when we say Swabhavavad, reject God, they specifically you have to mention, or what we can say is God and liberation can be we can put together, reject God and moksha. Then dharma, अर्थ, काम and मोक्ष, इनमें से सिर्फ काम and अर्थ is accepted, basically dharma and moksha. So about the purushartha also specifically you can mention, or maybe you can club these 2 points. Okay. So when you write this, now see this, because I am writing on the this thing, blackboard, it is taking too much space. You might think critical comment शुरू होना था, यहाँ पे क्यों नहीं शुरू हुआ? Why isn't critical comment starting from here? That is basically because I am writing on the board and it's very small size. That's why I think. Otherwise, when you write this 5-6 point, it will be this much only, half of the page automatically. Then to some extent you have to also mention critical comments about the overall and especially epistemological stand. So Nyayikas will come and establish Vyapti and their rejection of Vyapti, basically rejection of inference. So Charvaka's rejection of inference is nothing but rejection to think, rejection to debate, rejection to discuss. So rejection of inference is not tenable for any philosopher. Second, Charvaka's, because of the matter is the only reality, tend to become hedonist and pleasure seeking philosophy. Third, Charvaka is not a philosophy in a way, it is more like a common sense thinking, which most of the time is not considered intellectually sound, so it is considered to be not very philosophically relevant. Another thing is that if perception, that is also one point you can mention here, if inference can be rejected because it goes wrong sometimes, in that case perception also can be rejected because the snake and rope example, that also can go wrong. So like that, 2-3 points as a part of criticism to what it is the Charvaka is saying you should write. And then comes conclusion. Now conclusion here, some part that I was talking about in introduction, you can mention here, like how because of this particular stand that perception is the only valid praman and all, Charvaka end up being hedonist. Charvaka is kind of considered to be a critical voice in Indian philosophy, the perhaps alone standing critical voice against the typical dogmatically spiritual or ritualistic philosophies that came up. So the voice against, so somewhere it's like the way Hume said that Kant said that Hume's skepticism roused me from the my dogmatic slumber. We can say Charvaka's criticism, Charvaka's commonsensical philosophy protected Indian philosophy from becoming dogmatic. So Charvaka's contribution to Indian philosophy as being a skeptical, as being a critical to the typical dogmatic philosophy have played a critical role in developing this thing, because Charvakas are the people who questioned everything on the basis of common sense. So whenever any so-called higher philosophies or complicated, complex, sophisticated philosophies were told, Charvakas were first to question them, and that actually made those philosophies to kind of refine themselves. Okay, so that can be part of your conclusion, right? That's how you should craft your answer. Now you might think, now this is our first question and that's how we are going to discuss, because for me question, especially in philosophy, once you know the content, writing a question is also an art. Now why I say art, because it's like a designing a question, not just dumping something, whatever you know. So you might feel that no sir, it's taking time and all that. See, that happens. That's because you need a lot of revision. That's the only answer for philosophy, especially paper 1, but also for paper 2. Okay, unless you know the things, the pointers that are at the tip of your tongue, it's very difficult to kind of craft your answer. For this now you understood the importance of this. This 1 minute, you actually kind of imagine yourself there is something called rough work papers you will be given in this thing, and while you writing answer, obviously you also will be having some rough paper. Keep always some rough paper with you. Do some 1 minute stuff. Try to formulate the answer. Try to, instead of writing the detail points will be kind of written once you start writing the answer. But the overall guidance should be decided first as to how I am going to go about it. Okay, I'll write some introduction first, then I'll write first subheading. So the point is, now in that 1 minute, what you should do is first decide the broad idea. The statement should be very vaguely, should be kind of manufactured in your mind, kept in your mind, what you're going to write in intro, what would be your subheading 1, subheading 2. If it is 15 marker, there will be 3 subheadings. If it is 20 marker, there will be 4 subheadings, or maybe And when I say 2, 3, 4, it can change 1 here and there. Like in this particular question also you can have 3. It depends on the type of the question. Okay. Yes, one more aspect in this particular question. Now, whenever do you agree with this stand? Okay, sorry. Do you agree with this stand? If this kind of question comes, what you should be doing is, in this particular case, conclusion becomes bigger, and in the conclusion you tell, do you agree or not? And in what way do you agree? Because see, first you have mentioned everything that is written, epistemology, implications and critical comment. Then in the conclusion, now you should not use this word. Don't write conclusion and introduction. You don't need to write these words. That's why I have written it. Even critical comment also. You can mention, if one particular school has talked about it, Nyayika's view. And if you want to generally write critical comment, then you can write. Yes, then you can write here critical comment. Okay, or comment from other schools, comment from alternative school, comment from critical schools, like that you can mention. But this Charvaka epistemology, implications and critical comment, this should be part of your answer. You need to underline it, highlight it, and then write point wise. So, what you should be writing here is, the structure is like this: intro, subheading 1, then point 1, 2, 3, then subheading 2, then point 1, 2, 3. Now I am writing 3, it can be 4, 5, depend on the pointer, and then critical comment. There also may be point 1 and 2, and then comes conclusion. And the word conclusion and the word introduction should not be used. So what you do basically, instead of that, instead of using these two words, you just write some intro, then subheading, and last may write some conclusion. Okay. Now, as I was mentioning, if the question is about your stand, what do you think? So don't use subheading like my stand, what I think. Don't use like that. In the conclusion, only thing is the conclusion will be bigger. Okay. There you can talk about points. What exactly is your stand? So obviously your stand will be on the basis of what? Your stand doesn't mean your own stand. That obviously depends upon these things before it. Okay, whatever Charvaka is saying, and especially whatever implications are, whatever criticism is, on the basis of this, this thing. Again, because of I am writing on the board, this has taken much space. Maybe this implication will come here only, because it is taking a lot of space. This much space is not required for introduction. No, half of the page. Just this much will be the introduction only. So it is just arrangement in the sense, because on the blackboard it is difficult to manage in that boundary. That's why you may think that how it's getting kind of the crossing the limit. It is not. If you write this answer, you will see that it is not going to cross the limit. It is within the word limit. Okay, and then in the end, what you write is your conclusion. Now here your stand will be on the basis of this thing. So obviously the implications, do you agree? So as far as the philosophy goes, matter as the only reality and perception as the only praman is not a tenable thing, is not a acceptable, convincible things for me. So this Charvaka's philosophy seems very narrow and very one-sided kind of philosophy, where anything that cannot be perceived is not considered to be real. So that you can mention as your stand, right? I hope you understood this particular question. Okay. So should we also see now in the same way we will discuss another question, next question I mean to say. Okay. What was the next question? Now it is again about Charvak. So as you know, it will be the same content, but again the same content would be required to be written in a different way. This question says, if liberation means end of pain and suffering, okay, if liberation means end of pain and suffering, then death is liberation. Elaborate in the context of Charvaka. So basically this statement has come, there is this quote of Charvaka where it says, Maranam eva apavarga. This is the statement of Charvaka. Maranam eva apavarga. Some people ask whether I should be writing it in this Devanagari. You can write, but always make sure that your medium of examination is English in a Roman script. So the moment you write like this, immediately after that you should be writing it in Roman also, and immediately you should translate it, so that even if somebody doesn't understand, death is liberation or liberation is death. But basically what they are saying is death is liberation means there is no other liberation but death. Now again, if it is 10 marker, what would you do? Imagine 2 pages, right? First, now you know already what you will be doing in that first 1 minute. Write some intro here, then subheading 1, then subheading 2, then kind of critical comment, and third, conclusion. So whatever I am writing in yellow is not part of what actually you are going to write on the answer side. So you can now in this particular this question you can start with this introduction. This statement only we can start with. So in your introduction what you write is like this. So basically what you write is, okay. So Charvakas being materialists and Charvakas being positivists, okay, they automatically tend to reject all the transcendental entities, including moksha in bracket liberation. So your conclusion is over. Sorry, your introduction is over. Then, okay. So basically now, when the content of the answer is almost the same, okay, but here basically what Charvaka is trying to say is Charvakas epistemology, that is perception as the only valid source of Praman, tends Charvakas to kind of believe. So, rejection of transcendental. So, here you talk about perception being only Praman and how it rejects and other things. Then comes Dehatmavad. Now, why Dehatmavad? To reject the transcendental soul. So, there is no soul other than body. So, the moment there is no soul other than body, there is nothing called liberation but death, because body does not get liberated. Body dies and there is no body, no soul other than body. So, if soul is equal to conscious living body, okay. So, end is never liberation. It cannot be because there is no soul. So, end is always death. Now, obviously, critical comment क्या होगा? So, you mention about Nirvan, you mention about Siddhashila, everybody, you mention about Kevalagyan, and obviously you mention about Moksha. These are all critical comments from respective field, and it has been experienced by respective people. So, how can you say that there is no liberation? People have liberated themselves. Buddha have liberated himself, and after liberation he has been teaching for so many years, around 50 years. So, that you can mention, and then conclusion. So, what conclusion? Now, conclusion, because Charvaka is a very limited topic, Charvaka's conclusion will be again same, that because of the strong and rather extreme epistemological stand, Charvaka had to kind of subscribe to the positivistic and materialistic philosophy, which tend to make them hedonist, that is pleasure seeking people. But, and the same thing, Charvaka has kind of saved Indian philosophy from becoming ritualistic and dogmatic by asking critical questions arising from the common sense. So, that can be your conclusion here. So, because it's also kind of a similar question, so, and similar, because Charvaka's topic, you know, it's very it's perception, matter, Dehatmavad, that's all, and you know, pleasure is the ultimate, that is artha and kama is the only purusharthas, there is no dharma and moksha kind of purushartha. So, that's the thing. So, that's how you need to write. So, the takeaway today is this, that when you write answer, you should be kind of crafting the answer. You know, content is important, and I am assuming that content you will be reading and revising. You might have done your foundation, your revisions, your own notes and things, whatever might be the thing. But when it comes to writing answer, it should come out according to the demand of the question. So, this particular question is kind of asking you the question about what? That this Maranam evam apavarga, death is the liberation, no other liberation. So, the basis is again perception, rejection of transcendental entities, okay, soul, rejection of soul, especially Dehatmavad is a very strong point. So, that is why it has come as a subheading. So, the most important thing is good intro, appropriate subheadings, critical comment to kind of complete the thinkers this thing, answer, and then conclusion. That is how kind of you write the answers. So, I hope it has been helpful to you for your this thing answer. Now, this was the first video. So, I hope you understood. If not, I would request you, and this should be the habit for you, that you please make notes as to what you would be, or you are going to ask me. You can directly ask me. You can get my number of, and you can get my contact number from the administration. you can directly ask me on WhatsApp, on Telegram, whichever is comfortable for you. Some of you are already doing it. If you think you want to discuss that also, you can mention in the WhatsApp. Otherwise, whenever you people are comfortable, mostly every week there will be some kind of a discussion Zoom call. So there you can ask live questions to me. Okay, but before that, if you want to ask, you can ask me over WhatsApp or Telegram. So thank you very much. See you for the next question.